Welcome back. I hope everyone learned a ton in that last session, and I hope that the Q&A was really rich for everyone as well. This next one I am very, very excited about. So this panel is all about financially supporting CDFIs through the perspectives of those who see themselves as advocates of their work. We're going to be focusing on how the recent support for CDFIs that have been led by Black, Indigenous, and people of colors, and how the capital structures, the policies, the relationships, and advocacy, how can they be utilized to support the flow of capital to Black businesses and communities, thus creating financial justice. Let's listen.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Gary Cunningham, President and CEO of Prosperity Now. Prosperity Now exists to create a fair and just economy that's free from structural inequalities and racism. We envision an economy where everyone can fully participate across their life cycle, where households can build sustainable wealth through generations and communities can prosper without exception. I am so excited today to be part of the Black Finance in Florida conference, and I'm excited for this conversation that we're about to have on the importance of community development financial institutions in supporting Black-owned businesses throughout Florida, but throughout the country. We have a great panel here today of distinguished leaders in the field, many of whom I've known for many years. I want to start Connie Evans, who is President and CEO of the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. Welcome, Connie. Donna Gambrell, President and CEO of Appalachian Community Capital and Chair of the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs. And Lisa Mensah, who is President and CEO of Opportunity Finance Network, lovingly known as OFN. I've worked, as I said, I've worked with each of the panelists today, and I consider them both good friends and colleagues, and probably the most knowledgeable people in the field on community development financial institutions. Before we begin, I want to set the context for the discussion and give just a small history of the CDFI movement and why CDFIs are so critical as a resource for Black businesses, but also BIPOC businesses throughout our country. For those of you that may not know, community financial institutions are alternative lenders that were established by the Department of Treasury in 1973. Nationwide, CDFI industry manages over $222 billion in assets, and there are more than 1,100 CDFIs throughout the country. CDFIs serve low and moderate income communities by providing financial services such as affordable and long-term credit, counseling to new and distressed borrowers, and banking services to communities that mainstream financial institutions do not serve. Because of their local focus, CDFIs understand the economic and social conditions and market opportunities in their community and are thus uniquely positioned to serve Black business owners. In fact, a report by the Federal Reserve shows that Black and Hispanic-owned businesses are less likely to apply for financing at small banks and are more likely to apply to community development financial institutions relative to white-owned firms. And so the question is why we need CDFIs. Access to capital is the most significant barrier for Black businesses, and CDFIs are one of the most promising tools for reaching those businesses with capital, technical assistance, trusted guidance, and access to markets. According to the US Census, and this is pre-COVID data, Black-owned businesses were the fastest growing business segment in a 7-year period. So in the United States, Black-owned businesses grew the fastest in the country. However, as we all know, the COVID has not only impacted us from a health perspective as Black people, it has also impacted us in our businesses. One study showed that between February and March of 2020, 41% of Black-owned businesses ceased operation, at least in that period. The impact of COVID will continue to exacerbate the racial wealth divide in this country if we do not take immediate steps to mitigate this economic disaster in our community. CDFIs will play a critical role in both in the rebuilding and the recovery of our communities. Of course, there's a lot more I could say, but we need to get to this panel, so I'm going to actually move the agenda. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to take a little bit of time to say who they are, what their institution does, and any opening remarks that you would like to make. And I'm going to start with my good friend, Connie Evans. Connie?
Thank you, Gary. It's such a pleasure to join you along with our dear friends, as you've already mentioned, Lisa and Donna. Hello, everyone. I'm Connie Evans. I'm President and CEO of the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. AEO is the National Trade Association for U.S. microfinance and microbusiness. When we're talking about a micro business, we're talking about a business with typically fewer than 5 employees. But AEO and its 1,700 plus members across the country actually work with businesses typically up to 20 or so, because we know when these businesses are able to get capital and resources that they need, they grow and they hire. We define a micro business or microfinance with capital needs typically up to $250,000. Although a micro loan in this country is defined as $50,000 and below. So we talk about microfinance and microcapital to extend to the needs of the majority of these micro businesses. In case you don't know, over 90% of all businesses in this country are actually micro. 96% of Black-owned businesses are micro. AEO works to provide services through our 1,700 member organizations that include capital and business support services, or what we call as trusted guidance. We also have one of the largest networks of CDFI business lenders in the country. There are various types of CDFIs. We exclusively work with CDFIs who are primarily business lenders across the country. AEO has 3 primary buckets of work. The first is our research. I invite you to check out our research studies at aeoworks.org. We also have a second bucket of policy and government relations, where we work to address the barriers experienced by the structural problems and challenges we have through policy. And then lastly, and our largest bucket of work, if you will, is in innovations. AEO typically is not a direct service provider to entrepreneurs themselves. We provide resources, innovations, problem solving for the industry, creating the tools that we feel are most needed based on data to help entrepreneurs, again, hire, grow as they move through the different stages of their businesses. One of the things that we do is working with CDFIs around the country. AEO is not a CDFI itself, but by providing these services, these tools, these solutions, so that they can actually provide the services to entrepreneurs in their neighborhoods and their communities, we also help build their capacity. By getting them the tools that are most needed by Black-owned businesses, they are then able to include or increase their toolbox with capacity and with solutions that can help these businesses right on the ground. They're very well positioned to do that because of their location, but also because of their mission and oftentimes because they are providing culturally appropriate businesses to Black entrepreneurs. I am so excited to be here with BBIF because they epitomize the kinds of organizations and CDFIs that really exemplify good performance. They are located in communities. They have been innovative in providing peer cohorts to work and problem solve together that are trusted peers of their own in terms of being other Black entrepreneurs. And when SBA changed their policies on who was eligible for the capital they provided, BBIF modified their programs because those programs by SBA suddenly made all their Black businesses ineligible. They found the resources, changed the policies, and made those loans anyway. Those are the kinds of CDFIs that really support Black-owned businesses throughout the nation. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Connie. And now I'm going to turn it over to Donna Gambrell. Donna, could you give us an introduction and a welcome? Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Gary. And it's a pleasure to be on the panel with you and Lisa Mensah and Connie Evans. But most of all, very grateful for the invitation from Inez Long and the Black Business Investment Fund of Florida. The African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs is a group of 46 executives that lead CDFIs all across the country. The representation is from the very small CDFI that may have under $1 million in assets to the very large CDFIs of over $1 billion. We came together 2 years ago, primarily because we were interested in not only sharing our knowledge and expertise, but also because there had not been a collaborative of Black-led CDFIs before that. We felt that it was really important not only to talk about ways in which we could support one another, but also, more importantly, how we could attract additional resources to make sure that the communities that we served were being served to an even greater degree. These last couple of years, of course, we've seen a great deal of unrest in the country, certainly a lot of focus on racial equity. Our overarching goal is to close the Black wealth gap. And we have among that membership not only CDFIs that are focused on small business lending, but also housing, community facilities, education, and health, and so many others. The majority are loan funds, but we also have some new members, a couple of credit unions that are Black-led and owned, as well as minority depository institutions. So I look forward to talking with you and my colleagues about the work that still needs to be done in this area as we move forward, as we all promote our agenda to make sure that our communities are actually better served not only through products and services, but certainly through exemplary leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna, and very much appreciated. And turn it over to Lisa Mensah. Lisa?
Hey, Gary, thank you. And lovely to follow Connie and also our dear Donna, and shout out to BBIF and all the folks in Florida who are tuning in. I lead the association that is a large tent of CDFIs. We're called Opportunity Finance Network. We're a collection of over 350 loan funds, microfunds, community development, credit unions, community development banks, all dedicated to lending where it counts. And I'm proud to say that BBIF is a member. Donna has served on our board for many years and just recently was awarded our highest award, the Gambrell Award for Leadership. So I like to say that OFN exists to bring funds to our field. We are a CDFI ourselves, to elevate the voices of our field. We are a strong advocate in Washington for the policy work and to strengthen our members. Currently, and we'll hear more about this, we have been working hard on bringing new private resources to our field and to also really taking advantage of a new climate in policy around our CDFIs. So there couldn't be a better time for BBIF to lead a conference on Black finance. And I look forward to contributing the OFN voice here today. So thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Lisa, and I'm so glad to have all three of you here, but thank you in particular. So I wanted to, get into a discussion here about, what is it from the three of your perspectives? What is it that CDFIs can do to support Black-owned businesses, given the times that we're in? And Connie, if you want to start us off, what are your ideas about what can they do?
Well, I think, Gary, one of the things that CDFIs can do right now, particularly for Black-owned businesses, is to get engaged with financial justice movements. For example, AEO set up a coalition called Page 30 Coalition with a number of partners, including Prosperity Now. And the focal point there was to re-examine, really look and I think it's so important when we're talking about financial justice that we have to talk about and look at how do we level the playing field. And two, I guess, practices come along with that in my thinking. One is taking assessments. We need to assess situations that we find Black-owned businesses having to operate in. And then we need to go toward reform. We need to reform the policies that keep these barriers in place and prevent financial justice from actually occurring. That takes advocacy, that takes, in addition to the assessment, but when it comes to bringing this, again, reform in place, I think that's what CDFIs have to do. Now, being a trade association and a membership, we normally take on advocacy issues and financial justice issues all the time. You don't need to have a whole staff. By joining coalitions and working with others like the Page 30 Coalition, any CDFI can join and participate, advocate at the local area, in the local communities, at the state level, and particularly at the federal level, where we see so much policy entrenched in the structural rules and laws that have been put in place for years. I think it's one of the most important things we can do and that CDFIs can do. And that cuts across the board. As we work with Black-owned businesses and do a lot of the research, Blacks pay a high cost because we do not have financial justice. Whether we're talking about going to a bank and trying to get a loan where we know that Black-owned businesses don't receive the same amounts or the higher amounts that they ask for, like their white business counterparts. Or maybe we're talking about the fees and the ridiculous policies and fees that come along with being released from prison, and now you're trying to start a business. You can't save because you got to put all this money to kind of pay fees to move around and do everything. We Blacks tend to pay a much higher cost because we do not have financial justice. And so as important as getting capital in communities, in local communities, it is just as important that we create a policy environment that makes sense for Black folks to move from being in inequitable conditions and real barriers to a robust marketplace where they can play on an even playing field, bringing their talent, their capacity and know-how to the forefront.
Well, thank you for that. Donna, what's your comments on that?
Well, Connie actually ended where I would have started, which is talking about the policy. And she did that so eloquently, because I think you have to have the policy in order to make change happen. Certainly on a macro level, but I think that also applies within the communities where small businesses and especially Black small businesses are located. One of the things that I would recommend, Gary, is that CDFIs continue to do what they do well, and that is to work one-on-one with small businesses, Black small businesses, to make sure that they understand what the needs and challenges are, as opposed to having a top-down approach, have a bottom-up or an alignment, not even a bottom-up, but an alignment of views and what those concerns and particular needs are, especially from Black small businesses. You know, at the Alliance, even as part of the Paycheck Protection Program Round 2, the members were very concerned about Black small business owners who would not be ready again for the second round of stimulus funding. And so they came together as a group and had a Get Ready initiative where they were working with their small business customers, helping them with the application, with packaging those applications, and then working within the group to forward those applications to other Alliance members who were in fact processing the loans. To me, it is us not only helping our communities, but also making sure that we're supporting our own infrastructure as well. And so I would continue to urge that kind of active involvement and participation to continue. I think that's what will help those small businesses and help us, I think, have an even better understanding of what the challenges are and how to overcome the challenges that they're experiencing now.
Mm-hmm. So Lisa, what's your thoughts on this question?
Love the question. What can we be doing now to have significant impact, particularly in our Black communities? That's why we're gathered here. And I love Connie's point about the fights, both for access, but also not only to assess the situation, but how do we engage in reform? And Donna, you've given us beautiful examples. I would just bring it home by saying, this is a big moment for Black businesses and for our CDFIs. You know, the country has awakened to the fact that this has not been a just system. First, it's who got sick, and Black, Indigenous, people of color got sick from this pandemic. Who had to leave their homes and work? It was Black folks and people of color and Latino folks and Indigenous folks. Then who got the George Floyd moment really showed us what is it going to take to lift up these communities. So my big thought about this moment is this is a moment to bring our partners to help. This is a moment when America needs to lift harder. And this is when we need our private partners, our bank partners, our corporate partners, and our government partners. And I would just say, in addition to thumbs up to everything Connie and Donna said, I feel this is a moment, and CDFIs can stand up. Institutions like BBIF, who've been waiting for 30 years for the proper kind of funding and the proper kind of partners so that they can be a force in Florida. This is the moment for us to say it is time. At OFN, we've been building new partnerships with companies like Google and like Twitter, who have brought their corporate financial house, their treasurers, their CFOs, to make long-term capital available to our field. That's been a long time in coming, bold. And I feel like there is a moment in the country where we're willing, people are searching, what does it mean to combat systemic racism? Well, the new administration and many companies across America are answering that by saying it means investing in Black businesses or businesses led by people of color. It means there are plenty of things we could do, but part of it is dealing with wealth and ownership and property and who has the ability to start and run businesses in this country. So the country is answering that question with us and saying it's a moment to come now and do something about the appalling inequities in access to finance and the appalling inequities in what we've called, I love what Robert Smith calls us, CDFIs and MDIs and minority depository institutions. He calls us the capillaries of the financial system. Sure, you need arteries, you need the biggest banks, but you also need the small capillaries who are specialized in getting funding to the kind of businesses that Connie is talking about. It won't work if we don't fuel the capillaries. So my feeling is grab the partnerships, make them serious now. It is time to fund this field, to partner it for the recovery the country needs, for the work of undoing systemic racism. So Gary, I think we got some good news that the partners are listening, they are coming, and we are trying to stand up and say, we don't have to figure this, we don't have to question what then to do. What we should do is support the BBIFs of the world so that they can do the work that they are in place to do. So I feel quite hopeful for this moment.
Wow. All I can say is what I took away was Connie's remarks about economic justice in addressing issues from a justice lens. I took away from Donna the fact that we need to advocate on behalf of our communities and unify our voices. And then I heard from you, Lisa, that we need to build partnerships at scale. That building those partnerships at scale at this critical moment in time is such a critical part of what we do. We are at a inflection point. Some would call it punctuated equilibrium. We're at that point where things are changing, and we're either going to be part of the change or we're going to be changed on, if you will. And so part of this is ensuring that we are working together to do that. And I can say on behalf of all of these distinguished folks that are on this this program with me, that we stand ready to work with all of you to make a difference in this communities. I want to thank Connie, Donna, Lisa for your insights. And I totally enjoyed the conversation today, and I believe our audience will enjoy it as well. I'm going to ask our audience to push the join button to catch us in the Q&A that's happening right after this, because we're going to have a real powerful session of question and answers with you live in a moment. So thank you so much. Really appreciate being here, and thank BBIF for having us today. Thank you.